Peace and all power to the people. Once again, this is the Panther 48, and today we're going to have a discussion and a build on the root of politics. We're going to give you a functional definition of politics today. Ironically, it is election day. So what we're about to give you is not to try to influence what party you should vote for, uh, what person you should vote for, just to give you an understanding of politics itself. And we're going to make a series out of this because we want to make sure that the people have a functional definition of politics, not a basic, but a functional definition of politics, something that they can utilize in making these types of decisions. Sitting here as the panel of the Panther 48, we have calling out of California, San Diego, uh, the Chief of Staff, Brother Robert Ward Williams.
All power to the righteous people.
And we have calling out of Florida, the Minister of Information Emeritus, Brother E.
Greetings, Black fam. Shout out to Auntie Dorcas. Happy birthday.
And myself calling out of Texas, Brother Sight. Anyway, I'm going to start it off by giving us a quick vocab rehab and giving an explanation of how the American political system is theoretically supposed to be organized. And then I'm gonna let the other brothers get in and give a few breakdowns and builds on this subject. Anyway, we're dealing with politics, and essentially at a most basic and root level, the word politics is the science of making decisions. Essentially, the root of the word politics is policy, and policy are the goals and the laws that a society has set up for itself. And the root of the word policy is a Greek word polis, which literally means city. Like you hear the word metropolis or metropolitan. All of those words essentially mean city. Even the word polite, when you hear a person say, when a person sneezes and you say, bless you, or this person say, excuse me, you say he's polite. But the word polite in Greek literally means citizen. So the word literally means that you are operating under the policies that have been set by your overall society. That's what the word literally means. So politics is nothing more than the science of making decisions for the society itself. Now, I could go into the origin of cities just real quick. It's not hard to see that human beings, we have not always had cities. We have not always had quote unquote civilization, armies, militaries, none of that. We've not always had that. At one time, you was walking around in the jungle barefooted, and it didn't take long for human beings to realize that we stood a greater chance of survival if we lived in close proximity to each other, if we united with one another, because we are not the strongest or the fastest creatures in the jungle, in the wilderness. We can't fly the fastest, we can't swim the fastest. The thing that makes us the premier creature on the planet is our brains, our minds. And when we unite those minds with other minds, then that makes us the most dominant animal on the earth. So it didn't take long for us to realize that it was more beneficial to our survival for us to be around each other. And when we made a decision to be around each other, the first groups that made a decision to stick closely around each other were those who had blood ties, related blood ties. So that therefore that created the first families. And we still have this process going on in the community today. Now it's usually the grandmother is the head of the family. The oldest woman in the family is usually the matriarch, and she's usually the head of the family. Uh, uh, in those times, you had the leaders of these families as well. Then these individual families decided to come together and form a larger group that we would call tribes or communities. And those heads of those families became the first governing bodies of those type of societies. Now, since those heads or that quote unquote government was also connected to the people they was governing, that government usually was a righteous one. And it usually carried out the will of the people. Because you got to keep in mind that government came from the people and that government was the people. Throughout time, that organization got bigger and bigger and bigger to the point that that governing body kind of separated itself from the people. And it stopped being the body that existed to carry out the will of the people, and it became a body that existed to carry out its own will, to maintain its own power, and then the people in that process became peasants. In this process, power over the society was taken from the people and given to that body, which was called government. And that's where we kind of went astray. But that's just a quick and basic and overgeneralization of that history of how society grew. Anyway, I want to give a quick understanding of the political structure in America. Now, in America, if we want to, let's look at the hierarchy of America. Theoretically, the highest body in American government is we the people. Theoretically, keep in mind, I'm saying theoretically, we the people is the highest body in the government. And if you ever seen the Panther movie, it shows this in the movie, and it shows this in anything you've ever read on Bobby, on Hugh, and things like this. While they was revolutionary thinkers, they believed in a lot of the concepts that the quote unquote founding fathers had wrote down, but was hypocritical about it. They didn't. That's why Hugh and them always stress the people. Because when you look at the Constitution purports to be written by the people. Constitution said it was written by the people. It was written by you. It started, the very first words in the Constitution says we the people, and then it purports to break down the wills and the needs of the people. So the highest governing body in this society is we the people. Under the people, you have people that sit in elected office to carry out the will of the people. You have the three major branches of government: the executive branch, the legislative branch, and you have the judicial branch. Now, this is where I'm gonna catch Brother War off guard, because he's looking off to the side, looking like he's getting ready for work or something. Can you break down to the people what the executive branch is and what the duties and responsibilities of the executive branch?
Executive branch is the ones that do the execution, which is the president and the 15 ministries of the United States, or the cabinet, so to speak. So within that, they are the ones that basically, the president has executive powers to take us to war, the executive powers to basically, when legislatures and things come across his desk, he's the one that signs it and acts it and puts it into fruition, so to speak, or makes it, or executes it, or makes it happen, or makes it takes place. So from that standpoint, when we think about we the people, or we go into the governing of we the people, you have this head figure, or this head body that is ran by, through the executive branch, that's ran by an individual called the president. This person is the one that ultimately accepts or makes that decision and casts it out so that it can be implemented and carried out through the legislation or through the judicial, so to speak, and which is left for interpretation.
Now, first you have, as Brother Rogers explained, is the executive branch of government. They have what's called a separation of power. That's why you have these three branches, because they didn't want too much power to be seated in one group. So next you have the legislative branch. I'm gonna explain what that is. And you hear it all the time, it's Congress. The legislative branch is essentially Congress. And Congress has two parts to it. It has the House of Representatives and it has the Senate. Now, the House of Representatives has 235 members, and the Senate has 2 elected members from each state. So essentially, it's like 100 members of the Senate. And these two houses have, these two parts of the Congress has equal powers to pass laws, to create bills, all of that. So while the executive branch, its job is to enforce law, the legislative branch's job is to create the law. So the one who creates the law can't enforce it, and the one who enforces it can't, or supposedly is not supposed to be able to create it. The word Congress, the word itself literally means to unite or to come together. When you and your lady get together at night and y'all do your thing, y'all are engaging in Congress. That's what the word literally means. The first definition of the word Congress is to engage in sex. So the word Congress literally means to unite. So that two words, that House of Representatives and that Senate coming together to create that body of Congress is that unity. And in the House of Representatives, you have a Speaker of the House who heads the House of Representatives, who is elected by the majority party in the House at the time. And then for the Senate, the head of the Senate is the Vice President. So now, for the add Brother E, where you get a people an understanding of what the judicial branch is and its duties.
Say it again. I
What
can hardly hear you. Volume's real low.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear that real good.
Okay, give the people a understanding of what the judicial branch is and what their duties are.
The judicial branch generally refers to, well, what's summed up by the Supreme Court, which is a collection of judges whose primary function is to, at least from where we sit, is to determine the constitutionality, the justness, so to speak, make rulings about laws that are passed, amendments, things along those lines. And interestingly enough, in terms of our citizenship that you spoke of earlier, everything in every law in this country that's passed is supposed to support and be in alignment with the U.S. Constitution. Again, the Supreme Court, the judicial branch, whose members are appointed for life terms. You know, the president just a few weeks ago, they just confirmed the latest when that little old broken down white chick died. She was a liberal, so-called neoliberal, and of course Trump and all these cats wanted to fill it with a conservative seat so that the majority of the members of the Supreme Court would be conservatives, which is what happened. They passed. They were able to get her, this woman, I forget her name, but has a history of being very, very conservative in some of her views and rulings. And the justices are typically judges from other courts around the country. So they nominated her. Usually the process takes a minute. This time it took like a week or two. Back in 2016, or around 2016, the last election, whatever the hell that was, there was a similar situation going on. There was I think it was Anthony Scalia, one of the Supreme Court justices, died. And so there was this debate back and forth. Should we go ahead and let Obama fill the seat? They tried to put somebody up. The Republicans blocked it, said, yeah, you're about to go out, so we're going to wait until we get a different president in, hopefully one of ours, and we're going to appoint somebody to it. So they went back and forth and fought. This time, the tables were flipped. Anthony Scalia was conservative. RBG was this liberal chick. And so when she passed, the same fight went on. This time the Democrats were saying, let's go ahead and fill it. And the Republicans, let's wait until after the election to fill it. Republicans were saying, nah, we want to go ahead and fill it now. So everybody was being, what they do, hypocritical, and flip their positions. But anyway, going through it, she was put into power. She was confirmed. She's in there just in time to start working on the rulings with the whole election and everything that's happening, because there will be challenges to the election results, probably from both sides, or at least the loser side. Whoever doesn't get it is going to yell and fuss about it. But every law in this country is supposed to support and abide by the intent of the framers of the Constitution. In other words, when they said, Congress shall not make any laws abridging the right of the people to maintain a well-armed militia. So the Supreme Court comes in, if there's a challenge to some law that's passed, says, hey, y'all can't have guns, the old NRA thing and all of that. A law gets proposed or passed or whatever, Supreme Court will come in and say, okay, what was their intent? What did they mean when they said maintain a well-armed militia? And they'll make a ruling as to whether or not this law supports what the Constitution, the framers, the writers, those racist, African-owning motherfuckers, Jefferson and Washington and all of them, what did they really mean when they said this? Well, if you apply that same idea, that every law has to support the intent of the framers. The intent of the framers in this country was never for African people to be citizens, because they, like I said, they were all 14 of the people that signed the Declaration of Independence and all of that, John Hancock, Ben Franklin, all these cats owned African people at the time that they signed the shit. So they didn't even view us as human beings. So their intent could not have been for us to be citizens. So any law in this country that provides for the rights and the whether it's voting rights, whether it's human, whatever, civil rights in this country, any law that says that we have the right to do anything is technically unconstitutional, because again, they did not see us and remember, intent did not intend for us to be citizens of this country. So if you don't believe, check out the Federalist Papers. There were like private papers, dissertations, memoirs, or not memoirs, but writings of people like Jefferson and Hamilton and all these cats were right there. You see, this is one thing, white folks write shit. We don't do that. White folks write, you can find damn near anything you want to know about white folk because they've written it down at some point in the past. And so they have these things called the Federalist Papers where they give their opinions, where they say exactly what we've touched on many times. They say exactly that, especially Jefferson and Hamilton, I believe it was, that the masses of the people, essentially in our terms, the masses of the people are not fit to govern themselves. They say that flat out. So on top of that, again, the U.S., the Supreme Court, their job is just like, it's real plain and simple. Congress makes the laws, the president enforces them. He's the top cop, the enforcer, and the Supreme Court rules on the constitutionality and the correctness. Do these laws support what the intent of the Constitution is? So the Supreme Court, they're judges, plain and simple, really easy.
True indeed. So let's do a quick recap. Appreciate it, E. You gave, as always, you gave a nice, deep understanding of that subject and tied it to some historical. So here we have the three branches of government: the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. The executive branch responsibility is to enforce the law. The highest office in that branch is the presidency. And so the presidency, as E just said, is the top cop. I mean, the president is the top cop, or did War say that? The president is the top cop, the head of the United States military, and whose job and responsibility is to enforce law. And each branch is able to do this by creating agencies to help them in their duties, such as the presidency. As the agencies under the president, the CIA, the IRS, the DEA, the FBI, and any other alphabet boys you can think of, is the assistant president in accomplishing the duty of enforcing law. Next, you have the legislative branch. The highest office in the legislative branch is Congress, whose job and responsibility it is to create law. So essentially, every law in the society has been created and organized by Congress. And as E so eloquently put it a few minutes ago, that the highest legal document in the country is the Constitution. And so therefore, no law can be written or put on the books that goes against the Constitution, which leads to the judicial branch, whose job it is to interpret the law that was created by the legislative branch. Their job is to interpret it to make sure that it is constitutional, and therefore that law can stay on the books. Now, I'm gonna use this example because I've had to discuss it and build on it and explain it to a few brothers before in the past when certain states decided to make weed legal. Here it is that marijuana was illegal federally, but it was legal in the state. And you might be like, well, how the hell is that possible? How can it be illegal federally around the country, but legal in a particular state? And this is why. This is why.
Prostitution too.
Huh?
Prostitution as well.
Prostitution as well. And this is why. The 10th Amendment of the Constitution, I'm going to read it because I can't remember it by heart. It says, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states to respectively or to the people. So basically in the Constitution, there is no amendment that says you can't sell marijuana. And because of that, and because of what the 10th Amendment says, a state is able to create a law as long as it's not violating the Constitution. It's not. and that's why those things went to the judicial branch, to the Supreme Court, and they're still wrestling with it, trying to figure out what they should do or how to do it. And that's why the executive branch can't enforce the federal law of not selling marijuana inside states that have decided to make it legal to sell marijuana. Uh, I want to build on this, and I'm going to get a little bit esoteric a little bit to go back to the judicial branch. The judicial branch has the Supreme Court has 9 members, and their decisions are made by the majority, basically the majority rule of that Supreme Court. That's one of the reasons why it's 9 members. Also, as Brother E just said, the Supreme Court is put into position by the appointment of the president and approval of Congress. That's how they put it. That's how a Supreme Court nominee, a judge, is put into the Supreme Court. And once they are put there, they're there for life until they die. They're there forever. There's nothing you, me, nobody can do about it once they put in position. Essentially, and don't run for the hills when I say this, the members of the Supreme Court are gods, essentially. And this is why I say this is what I'm explaining to you. And amongst the Hebrew people, when and I bring this up because this is a Judeo-Christian society, and majority of people in this society claim to follow the principles of the Bible. Amongst the Hebrew people, they had a group of judges. They had a group of judges whose job it was to interpret their constitution, which was the Torah. And whatever they said went. Well, this group of judges, they was called the Elohim. When you see that inside scripture, you think they're talking about some spooky thing floating around in the sky. They was talking about men, human beings who had been given the supreme power to interpret their highest document. That's what they were talking about. And let's look at if you ever been to court in your life or ever seen a movie of a court scene. Let's break this court scene down. You have a judge who comes out in this all black robe, and he sits behind this bench, and that bench is sitting kind of up on the stage. The judge sits higher than everybody in the room. When the judge walks in the room, everybody in the room must stand up until the judge takes a seat. Then once the judge sits down, everybody can sit down.
I hate that.
When the judge stands up to get ready to walk out again, everybody must stand up until the judge exits the courtroom. Then everybody can sit down again. Then you have a jury of 12 people sitting there waiting to cast a decision on your life. You have you sitting there with a defender, with a lawyer, and then you have the DA sitting on the other side bringing up the charges against you. And then you have the bailiff in the courthouse, in the courtroom, maintaining all justice and law, quote unquote, justice and law in the courthouse. Let me break this symbolism down to you. This is actually the scene of Judgment Day from ancient Kemet, from the book of Coming Forth by Day, in the halls of a Saw. That's what this is. A Saw is the judge sitting on the stand. You have 12 scribes sitting on the side. You have I left that out. The court reporter. You have Tahuti taking down everything that takes place. You have a scales of Ma'at where your heart is being weighed. Haru, your public defender, takes you to the scale and weighs your heart against the feather of Ma'at, and you have Anubis, which is the DA, who's standing there bringing the charges against you. This is what's going on in the courthouse. This is the same scene that they took. Because everything you look at in this society, you can find it in history. They played this symbolism out in some way, form, or fashion when establishing power. The judge is God. That's what the judge is, because the judge has full power over life and death. The judge can say 75 years and your life is taken from you. Or the judge can say you can go free. And even if you're on trial by a jury and the jury says guilty, the judge can set aside that judgment. The judge has all power to set aside that judgment. The judge is God. And when you're sentenced to prison, you're dead. You've just been sentenced to death, and they know it, and it's stated in the language that they use. If you go to prison and you feel like you've been convicted unjustly, you can write what's called a habeas corpus, 1107, write a habeas corpus to get yourself brought back to court to fight your charge again. The word habeas corpus in Latin literally means to bring back the dead body. That's what the word literally means. So you'll write filing the paperwork asking them to bring you back to life. That's what you're literally doing. And so this is what's why when they put a Supreme Court member on the bench, they're there for life. They basically those old decrepit gods, those old mob figures who get to make full decisions and cannot really be checked by the people. Now, I didn't mean to get long-winded on that, but that just touched me. But I want to say this. I want to say this about the three branches before we go on. The reason why the so-called founding fathers created these three branches and these separation of powers is so that each branch could check each other. Now, one branch you never hear about, and I'm gonna get into that a little bit, and that's we the people. That's another branch of government, and I'm gonna get into that. Now, the executive branch's job is to, as we just said, is to enforce law. The executive branch has the ability to check the legislative branch by refusing to enforce the laws that it created, and by the president's veto power. The legislative branch has the power to check the executive branch by not enforcing laws that the president by not creating laws or passing laws or bills that the president wants to pass. And the judicial branch has the ability to check both by making whatever policy, whatever law, whatever bill that they're trying to pass unconstitutional. This is the way that they all three check each other. Now, we the people are supposed to have supreme power in the country. And with supreme power is the ability to check every single branch. The theoretically, we the people can check the executive branch by not voting for a president that is not doing the things that the people want, theoretically. Theoretically, the people have the right to check the legislative branch by not voting for a House of Representatives or voting for the House of Representatives or senators that they feel is going to best represent where they're coming from. And the people theoretically have the ability to check the judicial branch again by his right to vote the presidency in the office, because the president chooses the members of the judicial branch. In reality, the people don't have the power to check any branch. They don't have any real power to check any branch. The people cannot check the judicial branch directly through their vote in any way, form, or fashion because those justices are not voted into power. They are supposed to be able to check the judicial branch on the side by voting for or against the president. I'm gonna come back to that in a minute and show you why that doesn't work. They do not have the power to check the legislative branch, because if the members of the legislative branch are making laws that the people don't like, then all the people are supposed to be able to vote them in or out of office. Now, when Congress makes a new law or proposes a new bill, that bill is supposed to go to the Federal Register for a little while to get the people, which is published publicly, to get the people time to look at that bill and then to either protest against it or make a statement against that bill, and then that bill cannot even be brought to the House. Now, here's the thing, and I want you to put it in the comments. How many of y'all have ever heard of the Federal Register? And since you're going to work every day and making sure that you can pay rent and feed your family, how many of you have time, if you've heard of the Federal Register, to take our time to look at it and see what bills are being proposed in Congress today to decide if you want to protest against that bill or not? How many people actually have time? And this is part of the reason why that this is the process. They take you on a loop to hope you get so dizzy by the time you do all the things that you're supposed to do that you'll say, man, forget that. I'm not even gonna mess with it. And that's what most people do. They just give up on it. They just leave it alone. But let's go to the presidency. Now you might say, but we still have the ability to check the president. If the president puts people into the Supreme Court that we don't like, or the president isn't keeping his promises for 4 years, we still can check him. We can vote him out and put somebody in that we think can do better by us. Here's the problem with that. The founding fathers, and E said it earlier, the founding fathers of this country did not believe in the people's intelligence enough to believe that they had the ability to make a rational decision when choosing their leader. So they gave you hope by giving you the idea that you had the power to choose, by giving you what's called a popular vote. Oh, y'all all running out today and y'all going to vote today, and that popular vote is going to be counted, and they're going to put it all up on the screen. They're going to let you know who the people like. But that's not who chooses the president. That popular vote has no real standing. It's like, and I always go back to prison to explain things from the prison point of view. In Texas, when you go to prison in Texas, you're not paid. They work you every day. You work like you work a job out here in the free world, but you are not paid a quarter. You're not paid a nickel an hour. What you are paid in is what's called good time and work time. Theoretically, this good time and this work time can get you out of prison earlier. If you have a 20-year sentence, you're doing every day that you sit in prison goes towards your 20 years. But every day that you work is another 2 days towards your 20 years. And every day that you stay out of trouble and follow the rules of the prison is another day towards your 20 years. So all those days, once they max out to 20 years, they're supposed to give you parole and release you from prison early. So theoretically, with all of that added up, a 20-year sentence, you should come out in 6 or 7 years, theoretically. Not true. While all of this is on the books and all of this is on the paperwork, and once a month, you get what's called a timesheet, letting you know how much time you have accrued through actual calendar years, through good time and through work time. And you looking at this, and when you look at it one day, it's gonna say you got over 170% of your time done. And you're gonna be like, well, how the hell am I still in prison? Because by law, the parole board has they have the discretion of whether or not they want to make your good time and work time count against you getting out. And 100% of the time, it doesn't count. 100% of the time. So if it doesn't count 100% of the time, you ask yourself, why the hell is it on the paper? Why am I getting the timesheet on it with it? So that you can't get out and try to sue the state of Texas and say they worked you for free because you got paid in good time and work time. This is kind of the thing that you're getting with this, with the popular vote, because the truth is the quote unquote founding fathers of the United States of America created what was called the Electoral College. Now, the Electoral College essentially numbered the same amount of people that's in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, the 235 and the 100. They have a person that matches every single number of everybody that's in Congress, and that group go into their chambers and they place a vote on who they want to be the president, and that group, the majority of whoever they vote for is who actually becomes the president. Now they look at your vote, the popular vote, and they can weigh in on it. Theoretically, they're supposed to, but in reality, the Electoral College's vote is what chooses the president. That's what confused a lot of people when they like, well, the people voted for him, but he got put in office. They stole the election. What happened? Nothing happened. Exactly what the founding fathers intended to happen happened. And that's why you really don't have the true power to check the president, and you don't have the power to check the judicial branch, because that power of electing that office is not really in the people's hands. And do any one of you brothers want to add to that?
I jump in real quick just to further elaborate a little bit on that. That element of control and power, you know, can go back to, when you talk about the founding fathers, can go back to the form of government that they previously came from, you know, from the standpoint of dealing with king and queenship. As it applies to that, you know, you're dealing with blood rights, and you're dealing with the rights of the so-called blue bloods, who basically had a birthright to rule. And regardless of the citizens of the quote unquote township, regardless of what they felt, the bottom line is that it wasn't inherited in their DNA, and it wasn't inherited in their way of life to be able to understand how to rule a nation, how to rule a governing, how to rule a body. So from that standpoint, dealing with the popular vote, yeah, you want to basically, it's used to gauge the people and how the people feel about a specific situation. But at the same time, the idea is that that body does not have the mentality to actually know how to govern itself. So therefore, we sit on this quote unquote panel or this position of power because ultimately we have the ability to know how to actually govern a people and govern a society. So what's being done at that point is you're putting your life, so to speak, or the we the people in the hand of a few. This even goes back to how the interpretation of the messiahship period is dealt with. This is also why, and I'm gonna just tie this in real quick, just for another topic on another day. This is also ties into why we often refer to things in stance of dealing with messiahship. When you talk about the COINTELPRO, when you talk about the mentality that they use to try to break down and destroy the African people here in the United States, what they do is they always refer to this quote unquote black leadership. Black folks have to have this black leadership. And within that black leadership, we have to have this person that sits above us who tells us what direction to go in, what we should believe in, what we should operate from, and how we should move. So the premise here is that the people don't have the power or the ability to actually recognize how to go about ruling, but we have a consensus of what we feel should be done. But there's this quote unquote messiahship that actually has the ability to govern. And so from that standpoint, that's why you fall into that trap, which goes right back and feeds right back into what Psych is saying about the Supreme Court. So that supreme mentality is in essence the undergirth and the root of how things are operated. That's all I wanted to say on that.
And I'm gonna add this before we get ready to close off. Brother, you ain't have nothing that you want to add before I break this down?
I was just gonna throw in real quick, as far as checks and balances, another way that one of the used to be effective ways that Congress could check the president is through the declarations of war. Since this is a country of war and we're constantly at war, Afghanistan for whatever it's 15, 20 years and all these other wars, is that war is not supposed to be declared except by an act of Congress. However, with the whole 9/11 and all of that, and George Bush and preemptive strikes and all of that was kind of set aside, which is why you see the president being able to go in and not officially at war, is able to go into places like Syria, and Obama going into Libya and bombing these folks just under the guise of policing, just like the cops in our neighborhoods. You know, there's been no necessarily a warrant or no judgment against somebody, but they're going in as a preemptive, under the guise of being preemptive to keep something from happening. Congress controls the purse strings, and that's one of the ways that they're able to check what it is the president, okay, Mr. President, you want to do this, but we're not going to allocate any funds for you to do it. So yeah, go ahead and do it with a zero budget. And so that's one of the ways they check it. And in my mind, that kind of alludes to or kind of suggests the ways that the masses of the people, since you acknowledge that the popular vote means nothing, that the economics of it, okay, yeah, y'all want to do such and such in the community, we're not going to fund it anymore. You know, the IRS is the you know, it's funny that for a few years, government organizations have been stockpiling munitions. They put up advertisements on the official websites calling out to folks that want government contracts, and some of the contracts have been for mass purchasing of munitions, guns and bullets and all of that type of stuff. So you got organizations like the IRS, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Post Office. These agencies have all been amassing weaponry over a period of time. So this becomes a part of the policing action of the presidency to kind of circumvent what it is Congress has said. But if we effectively pool and become aware of it, that's when we begin to be able to check the president and the Congress and all of these other cats just the way they check each other. is passing laws and then not funding those laws, letting them say, yeah, you all have to do this, the citizenry has to do blah, blah, blah. But if the citizenry refuses to put money into those actions, then it becomes an issue, and that's our check. And that's why I always say it's based on economics. All of these politics and whatnot, policy and politicking with each other and all of that is all for paperwork. It's all to maintain the illusion, because when it comes down to it, it's finances in this country. And Congress and the Senate are kind of, or the House and the Senate are kind of evidence of that, is that one of their ultimate powers of checking is controlling the purse strings and allowing you to have the conversation, to talk the talk, but not giving you the means to walk the walk. So that's it.
And I appreciate that. I forgot that part of Congress's duty. They are theoretically the only people that have the right to declare war. I left that out. I appreciate that. And as always, whenever I talk about politics, I like to break this example down. I like to break this point down because I think it hits straight on, and it ties into what the two brothers were just explaining. Huey P. Newton wrote a paper called "The Functional Definition of Politics." You can find this essay in the Black Panther Speaks by Philip S. Forner, and in it, Huey P. Newton essentially said that you look ridiculous claiming to have any kind of political power unless you have one of three powers. The one of three powers that he talked about was economic power, as Brother E just talked about, feudal power, or military power. He said that you cannot truly claim to be political if you have not neither of these three. There's no way you can claim to be political. And one of the examples that he used was Black people right after slavery during the Reconstruction era. There were more political positions in the Black community then than there are now. I know that might be hard to believe, but just look it up. A good book to read about it and see this is Before the Mayflower by what's the brother name that wrote the book?
Lerone Bennett.
Yeah, Lerone Bennett Jr. And then they show you all of this and that. But then in that book, they also show you what happened. See, once Europeans got tired of Blacks running around thinking they had political power, they showed them that they didn't have any political power. They only had political position. And they took them right out of position. They took them completely out of office. So that's how Blacks lost political power back then. I mean, political position. As Huey said, they only had political position, but no real political power, because in order to be political, you have to be able to give a political consequence. That's why you have to have either economic power, you got to have feudal power, which is land power, or you have to have military power. On the economic level, we can use the example, one of the most famous and most known examples of Blacks using economic power was the Montgomery bus boycott. At the time, Blacks was forced to ride at the back of the bus. And if a white person got on the bus and there was no more seats, Blacks had to stand up on the bus. So at the time, Martin Luther King and a group of civil rights leaders organized the Montgomery bus boycott, where Blacks refused to ride the bus for a year. After a year, they basically gave Blacks the right to sit wherever they wanted to sit on the bus. Now you have to ask yourself, did the city administrators, did the owners of the Montgomery bus company change their minds? Did their hearts grow tender? Did they say, man, we're not right doing this? They're human beings and we need to let them sit wherever they want to sit. No, that's not what happened. This is a capitalist society. And Huey said, and once you understand that, then you understand that anytime you're being oppressed because those who are oppressing you think it's profitable. And anytime you want them to stop oppressing you, all you have to do is make it non-profitable. That's it. And that's what they did with the Montgomery bus boycott. And they exercised economic power by refusing to spend their dollar with a company that was oppressing them. And that company wanted the dollar more than they wanted that oppression. Man, you can say wherever you want to spend, just spend your dollar with us again. And this is the way this society functions. As Brother E was just saying, once you have economic power, then you have the ability to move things in the political arena. The same thing happened at the University of Missouri a few years back. I think it was in 2016, I believe. The president was Ted Wolf. The Black students on campus were dealing with a climate of racism on campus. So they organized themselves and they went to talk to the president. to try to talk about it. The president basically told them, go to hell. I'm not trying to hear you. So what they did is they organized a boycott and said that we want Ted Wolf to step down because he don't want to hear us. And the black football player said, we're not playing another game until he steps down. Now, here's the issue with that. The colleges have this rule amongst each other. And the University of Missouri would have had to pay the competing college that they were supposed to play against $1 million and forfeited ticket sales if they didn't show up to the game. So by the black football players refusing to play, it would have cost the university $1 million. Ted Wolf stepped down because the black students gave them a political consequence, an economic consequence. And with feudal power, we're dealing with land. And I don't have to go into full detail on this. The fact is, land is the foundation of the state. One thing they're not creating no more of is land. They're never making any new land. It's not happening. So when you control land, you're able to control the power base. You're able to build homes, build communities, build businesses. All the natural resources, food, everything comes from the land. So when you control land, you control the power base. And then military power is self-explanatory as well. Because once you are sitting and talking with somebody and you're not getting what you need from them, politics continues. But it usually continues more aggressively in the form of bloodshed, in which we call warfare. If you don't have a military to go to war, then how can you give that political consequence? Another idea when you're dealing with, on the political arena, when you're dealing with military power, you're also dealing with people power. People power is tied to that because you're dealing with the uniting force of a group of people getting together. When black people get mad behind somebody getting killed by the police and they go to riot in their communities, people always say they turn their own stuff up. But here's the problem with that. Most of the time they don't own none of the stuff in their neighborhood anyway. And it gets the attention of those who run the society. Now, a lot of times when you have these rioters, you have people that are not politically conscious enough to use the attention that they just got to bring about a lot of the changes that they want. But I guarantee you, it gets the attention of their society. If nothing else, you have a mayor who's scared that they're not going to get reelected because they didn't have the power or the ability to make sure that their society didn't have a riot situation in it. And the citizens are so afraid that they don't even want to, they put the full blame on the mayor. The mayor turns around and put the full blame on the chief of police. So this is the power that the people have once they decide to unite together. And the last power, Hugh didn't talk about this, but the last power, because I think if you look at all of what we just said, it ties into this. The last political power you have is knowledge as power. Because if you don't know how to any of this or how to use it, then you don't have it. It's like a man laying on the bed and he's fiending for a cigarette. And there's a cigarette under the bed and he doesn't know it's there. The cigarette is a few feet from him, but since he doesn't know it's there, he's going to lay the rest of the night and fiend for a cigarette. And this is the situation that the people find themselves in. Whenever you don't know or understand what's going on in your society or how to run a society or how to create policy, then you become a victim of policy because you don't know how to participate in politics. And your full understanding, when you decide you want to be political, your full understanding of politics is, let me do my civic duty and vote. You brothers got anything to add to that before I close out?
Yes, sir. Real quick on the bus boycott. A lot of times when we mention the bus boycott, we talk about the direct economic impact. We also remember that it wasn't just the bus system that was losing money. You had a lot of these folks that were boycotting the buses were sisters. These sisters were maids in these and nannies in these white households. So the white women who depended on these sisters also began to make a ruckus and made themselves, the enemy of my enemy is my friend type of sort of situation. Where you had a backlash coming from those who depended on those folks who ordinarily would ride the bus to get to these jobs. So you had this whole other sort of demographic contributing into the backlash of, hey, y'all need to do what they say because my babies ain't getting took care of, my house ain't getting clean, blah, 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 blah. So that became a part of the dynamic that was going on as well. And all of these ideas of power and whether it's economic, military, or any of these things, for me is it kind of along the same lines is what you were saying, Psych. But I put it in different terms, is the underlying cultural foundations of all power. The Black community has money. It has economic power. You can't deny. We make Nike. We make Hennessy. We make Louis Vuitton and them. We make, all of these companies, these billionaires, we make them because we put so much money into their product. We take our money and give it right to them because that's the culture that we've been reared in, is to have things so that we gain some type of social status. We want things just because we've been taught to want things, as if this, pair of shoes is better than the last pair of shoes I got that's still, crispy clean and ain't got no scuffs and nothing on them, but I still want the latest pair because that's the culture, keeping up with the Joneses and competing and all of that type of stuff. So we rush to take whatever economics, that's one of the reason that money comes into our community and right back out. We're essentially, what do you call it? We're, what is it? We're washing the money for them. We're all they're doing is paying us, knowing that money's coming right back. Make everything look legal and even, Steven, we paid you, you gave it back to us. What are you bitching about? Umar Johnson said that these big figures like Oprah and Ron and all these cats are essentially redistributors of white wealth. White folks put money in their pocket, they turn around and distribute that money back to other white companies. And we do the same thing on a smaller individual scale. But because with the bus boycotts, we had a culture of cohesiveness. Ever since integration, we've had this culture of integration, this culture of the illusion of being a part of a bigger system in society, and that being able to buy, the latest tennis shoes or TV or iPhone is the inclusion in the country. That's what inclusion is for us, is being able to spend our money with them, as opposed to us supporting ourselves. So having the economics, we have weapons. We got NFAC and them have shown we got some pretty nice weapons sitting out there, but we don't have the cultural mentality to really put those things into effect and use in our community. There's some sister, I forget what city she's in, but she stood up and she did it in a very intelligent way. She stood in front of like a city council and went down a list and was just digging into the ass factually of the various members. It's on YouTube. The various members of this council, just reading the list, such and such, Mr. Such and such, you were caught doing da 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 da. So when these particular acts. So when you say that you want something and you support the people, blah blah, you're not telling the truth because I got the facts and that it. And she went in so hard that it's kind of been a viral thing, and it's gone to the point that now there is apparently, in fact, is providing her with security. There's a post, I think on IG, that this sister is now under the protection of NFAC, and there was some bragging going on. This is how you do it, and we got to protect this sister, and blah blah blah. We don't have the cultural mentality is that by protecting this Messiah, in a sense, that basically that we're doing something for the community, when in reality all we're doing is what they're doing is what a whole lot of people do for money, because she's not paying them, but they're doing private security for free. Culturally, that makes no sense whatsoever. Not even from the capitalist perspective, not from our perspective, providing all of this manpower and security to supposedly protect this one individual is not a good use of even the pretend military power or position or whatever we think we have. So we don't have the mindset, we don't have the culture to show up the proper usage of what it is we do have. So again, I say we have economic power in this country, but we give it away constantly because we have no culture to guide what it is we do with that money. So that maybe that's a good a next step, is to discuss, now that we've kind of laid out the ideas of what politics is supposed to be and becoming what it is, more the application in our communities.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. I can't disagree with that in no way, form, or fashion because people cannot operate in their best interests if they don't know what their interests are and if they don't have that culture to help them to be cohesive with each other, to see one another's interests as their own interests. So yeah, that's I mean, there's no doubt about it that that's one of the major things that put Jews in the position that they're in because they have a culture, an underlying culture that helps them to see their own interests, see each other as one another. And even other groups have that ability to a certain degree. But yes, I agree with that 100%. Brother War, if you don't have anything to say, we can sign out.
I do real quick. I just want to kind of go back on one point that I want the listening audience to recognize as it applies to military power. Most people are familiar with nations having armies. Within the United States, they have the Army, which is basically your ground troops, or the ability to control and dominate warfare through the land. But you also have the Air Force, and this is where we start getting into the separation of world powers versus other nations. And that Air Force is having the ability to be able to control flight and to be able to control and dominate war through the air. This is how the United States was able to deal with Vietnam, because they couldn't fight a ground war. They couldn't fight match rifle to rifle. So they rose up to the skies. But then you also, from having a political stronghold, you have to have a naval. A lot of nations don't have the ability to have navals because they don't have ocean front. Navals is what starts separating your world powers at that point, having the ability to actually go out overseas. Next that came onto the fold, we talking about something here recently, is what's referred to as Space Force. So you have the Air Force, and now you have the Space Force. Now we start getting into the big game, because in order to move forward in the future, you have to be able to penetrate and control and dominate through space. So the United States officially launched the Space Force branch under your boy, your president, Donald Trump. Another thing that ties back into the founding of the American government and the founding of government period goes into the Marines. A lot of people don't get the power of the Marine Corps. Marines go into the idea of maritime law, which has to do with the law of the seas. Because when you deal with colonialism and you deal with the conquering and the conquest, it's all about basically being able to dominate from one point to the other, which is why the emblem of the Marines is in essence, just like how it was with the United States, a phoenix. Before it was an eagle, it was a phoenix, people. And the idea of the phoenix rising up through the ashes had to do with the rebuilding of the empire. This is what it's about. So the Marines emblem is that phoenix rising above the planet Earth, because we're talking about maritime now. So it's rising above the planet Earth, and it has an anchor that penetrates from east to west, going through the equator. These symbologies actually give you key into how power structure is designed. So I just wanted to bring that point and drop that jewel out there, because a lot of people don't understand the concept behind how military power is divided, and why the United States puts so much money in its military power, more than any other nation. The United States drops a lot of money in that military power in order to maintain itself as a world power.
Yeah, you do.
True indeed.
That's all I had on that.
True indeed.
And maybe that's I know that's a very good point to delve into, is the culture of the military. You know, because these cats are a lot of them go in knowing, hey, I'm going to die. I'm possibly going to die. I'm probably going to die. And we still do it a lot of times for a country that we profess to not even, to have these issues and dislike and blah, blah, blah down the line. They pull from the poorest amongst us to fill these ranks. And it's at times crazy how you take these folks who are benefiting the least from this government to turn around and cats will put their lives on the line going out and putting themselves in harm's way And then you get those who rise up to the level of general and all of those things who are career military folks, and just the mindset. And that would be something that I know War would be able to get into a lot with just the culture and the backing, and how propaganda from the time you're a child until the time you hit and go into military, how you're being cultivated and guided in this direction of embracing, you know, saying you pledge allegiance to the flag and all this other crap to get you prepared to defend this country in one form or fashion. So again, going back to, you know, culture, there's a military culture that's completely different, completely removed, but founded and steeped in the overarching idea and culture of this country.
That's basically called the rise of the gladiator, which goes into the bloodlust ties that ties a warrior to the land base that is fighting for, or the kingship, going back to what I talked about previously, the kingship of protecting the one on top. See, so that it all goes back together, just like how we're talking about the three branches have a way of circulating the power amongst itself. That same concept goes into how you tie a citizen going through that pledging that allegiance back to that nation. So you find ways to unify the people blindly through their mass allegiance to a nation, or to a flag, so to speak. So then you get into the concept of why we pledge allegiance to a flag. So that goes right back into the whole thing about the gladiator. It goes back into the maritime law that I talked about, because you raise a flag for a certain reason on a ship. So we can go deep. So this is just our introduction.
And that's one of, if you look at the history of Rome, that was one of the issues as Rome got bigger with its military. Obviously, starting off, Rome had a finite number of people to bring into the military, and an even smaller group of people who were actually going to be in the military. And as it grew, it had to grow those numbers to maintain and to grow its empire. So what it ended up doing was bringing in mercenaries, those that it conquered. It would take on those armies and those folks, and they would fight alongside the true Roman soldier. Over a period of time, those people that they were bringing into the military did not have that allegiance to Rome itself, and so they were much shakier. So the more it spread out, the more the military brought in foreigners into their and foreigners in a big way mentally, not just because they were in a different spot, but because they had these cultivated allegiances to some other government. Now Rome is sucking them in and calling them their own. These cats were not dedicated to the establishment and the growth of the Roman Empire, not by nature, but by cultivation. So those were weak points that came along. If we kind of apply that to today, a lot of the stuff with Iraqi soldiers and these other soldiers, particularly in the Middle East, these cats do not have, and I'm talking about the ones that are supposed to be friendly to the U.S. that the U.S. is attempting to, or has been attempting to use in its enforcement of U.S. Culture and law and government in those areas. These folks are not truly dedicated and aligned to the U.S. Culture and cause. And so a lot of these Iraqi soldiers, you go up in there, there've been a number of reports where you have these quote unquote good guy Iraqi soldiers who turned around and flipped it and did some supposedly devious stuff to the U.S. to set off this bomb or just up and vacate their posts and whatnot, because they have not been culturally cultivated to support the U.S. They have no real allegiance to the U.S., so they'll go along with it for a minute, but when it begins to step on their toes or cramp their style or get out of bounds of what they're dedicated to, then their allegiance comes out and they say, yeah, we're not rolling with the U.S. So that historical thing is something that's a current event. It's happening as we speak. So yeah, and again, it goes back to the culture. That culture is not this culture, and because it's not, there's a conflict of interest. And you can apply that same idea here. Black cops, black troops, all of that. I've seen a number of YouTube videos of black cops lamenting over this idea. I don't know if y'all saw The Soldier, when the stuff was really popping off in the summer, there was at least one National Guard troop, this black dude. Black folks are protesting lined up, talking about I'm black and I'm proud and da 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 da. And it zooms in on this one particular brother who's a soldier, part of the National Guard, and he's standing there and he's mouthing the words with them, reminding himself, you know, he's got that down deep inside of him that these are my people. What the fuck am I doing? You know, this is my job, but this ain't my job. You know, so there's a conflict of interest in what's his name, Langston Hughes, and I'm not going to quote it, even though I love the poem, but it said essentially, this poem from the Harlem Renaissance said that there is enough dynamite of angst and anger. There's enough anger in the most backward Uncle Tom Negro in this country to blow this country away. So even those that have suppressed it and put all of that back in the back in the back, it's still there, you know, because it's a part of who we are. And it's our cultural awareness that taps in that you can't get rid of. You can push it down, but you can't get rid of it. So again, I guess that just feeds into the next one. I'm gonna stop because I know you got to cut this off. So sorry, you, bro.
Well, we had I think we had a good one, a real informative one. If we left anything out as far as the three branches of government and some of the viewing audience caught it, leave it in the comments. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. This was the Panther 48, Brother Sight, Brother War, and Brother E. Peace until next time.